So I have noticed in the past that when I do these things and I start them up, there's like a 10-second delay before I start talking. So I'm just hitting the button and starting to talk, and hopefully it's going to line up better this time. But anyways, welcome, another live stream. So I want to talk today, we got Halloween coming up. I want to talk about some strategies you can take, some things to consider for that. And once we're done talking about the Halloween candy and sugar and all of that good stuff, we will go ahead and jump into the Q&A side of things. If you have any questions you want me to handle, feel free to answer them while I'm talking. That way we can keep the flow going, and I'll jump right into them when I'm done. But in the meantime, just if anyone's out there, please let me know that you can hear me, you can see me, everything's running well, and that way I'm not doing this for nothing. And we'll get into it. So I want to tell you a little bit of a story first, kind of a backstory about Halloween candy and how, like, you know what, I come from where you come from. I really do. Sometimes it's interesting. People will say that I have a narrative when it comes to like sugar and good foods versus bad foods and things like that. Good morning. And it's so ironic because it's like I used to have a terrible relationship with food. I used to look at sugar as like the devil. I used to think that insulin was the devil. And I've learned and grown that you know what? It's just it's not. So you can see me. Let me know if you could hear me. Hopefully. If not, that's a problem. But yeah, like I just used to really struggle with this, and things like Halloween would be a struggle. You got all this candy around, all this goodness that I looked at as like just really horrible stuff that shouldn't be on this planet and that nobody needs. And I remember having one year, I had I called it a Halloween candy draft with my son. And we went trick-or-treating, let him do his thing, and then he had a big bag full of candy, and I had a draft. I said, okay, well, you can have, I don't remember the exact number, but it wasn't very many. I said, okay, you can have a handful of pieces. You choose which ones you want to keep, and we're throwing the rest away. And we threw them in the garbage, and I felt so proud about it. I felt like, yeah, like, sugar is horrible, and nobody needs this stuff. And people said, please don't throw it away. And they would say like, well, you can donate it to this or that, and I'm like, no, nobody needs candy. It's terrible for you, and it's the worst thing ever, and I'm doing everyone a favor by getting rid of it and having it not in this world. And I'm like, man, I think back now, I'm going, holy cow, how's that relationship with food treating you? But okay, good, thank you guys on the audio and video, so perfect. And anyways, a lot of people struggle with this. And if you're someone who has anxiety around Halloween candy, going out, having the food around kind of stresses you out and makes you feel like, especially if you're someone who feels like, well, maybe we shouldn't even take our kids trick-or-treating because I don't want to have that temptation around me. Well, man, it's time to have a gut check because, I get it, for one. Like I said, I've been there. I get it. And I know what it's like. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I think the biggest thing that can really help when it comes to how to handle Halloween, having all the candy around and everything, is just making sure that you're going in with a plan and understanding too that there's no right or wrong answers. Like you can choose to handle it however you want. No matter what you choose, there's going to be kind of like positives and negatives to it. You got to be okay with that and make that choice. But the reason I say it's so important to go in with a plan is not so that like you can hit your numbers or whatever else. It's that if you don't go in with a plan of what you want to do, psychologically it messes with you because you feel like no matter what you did something wrong. Let me explain what I mean by that. So let's just say you go in like, I'm not really sure I'm going to handle things. Let's just see how the day goes. And you decide, you know what, like, screw it. I'm just going to have fun. I'm going to, eat as much candy as I want and just get back on track tomorrow. And you know what, it's just one day. It's never going to make or break anything, which is very much true. But that wasn't really your plan. You just kind of decided in a wing of the moment kind of a thing. And what ends up happening? Well, you do that, and then you kind of go, oh man, like I shouldn't have done that. Like I should have stayed closer to my macros, or I should have stayed on plan better. And you kind of feel bad about it, which you shouldn't. On the flip side, let's say you go in with no plan, and you're like, yeah, I don't really need this candy. I want to make progress. Things are going pretty well. I'm gonna stick to my plan. I'm gonna crush my macros, and I'm not gonna have any candy, and or maybe I'm just gonna have one piece or whatever. And I'm just gonna fit into my numbers. I'm gonna stay on plan. Well, then you, on the flip side of that, you go, well, you know what? I probably should have stayed on. I should have been more flexible. Like, I shouldn't be so rigid with myself. I should allow myself to have a bit more fun. In either scenario, you're going to feel like you did something wrong because you had no plan going in. Whereas if you have a plan, no matter what the plan is, as long as you follow that plan, you can feel good about it because you made that choice. And that makes a big difference. So even if it is, you know what? I'm going to have all the candy I want. I'm not going to track it. I don't care. I'm just going to have fun. I'm just going to enjoy the day. Great. If that was your plan and you stick with it, you can feel good about that. If it's I'm making great progress, I want to keep things going, I'm fine missing out and not having some candy on this day, that's fine too. Like, that's totally fine, but that's your plan. And no matter what, you just have to accept what that means for you. So like, if you don't want to have anything and you want to just have fun and enjoy the day, or excuse me, I said that backwards. So if you don't want to have anything and you want to stick to your numbers, then be okay with that. Don't sit around and pout that you can't have more, candy and stuff like that, and just be okay with that because you're making that choice. Just like if you decide to have a ton of candy and just make yourself kind of feel sick, but you wanted to do that, then great. But then you can't be mad when the weight's up on the scale the next day. You know what I mean? Like, you made that choice and be okay with it. Understand too that the weight will be like falsely elevated. It's not like if you're up 2 pounds, you gain 2 pounds of fat, and it's just not going to happen that way. But it's just one of those things where it's so easy to say, oh yeah, I'll do it and I'll be okay with it, but then all of a sudden when it actually happens, you just don't feel so good about it. So just remember, like, you can't screw everything up in one day, and I fully encourage you to just enjoy the day and go in with the plan. Like I said, if you want to have maybe you say, I'm gonna have 3 pieces of candy, and whether you fit it into your numbers or not is up to you, but as long as you go into it with that plan, you're gonna be good. You're gonna feel just fine about it, and that's totally fine. And one of the biggest things for me when I realized that my relationship had improved so much was a few years back. It had been a long time at that point already since I had been a flexible dieter and had really made some significant mental improvements. But I remember my son knew that my favorite candy is Reese's Pieces peanut butter cups, just absolutely my favorite. And he did the trick-or-treating and he gave me a few pieces. He said, here you go, Dad. And I'm, oh, thank you so much. And how sweet. And I put them on my desk right in front of me right here. And I just sat them there and I'm like, oh, I'll have them whenever. And a few weeks had passed and I realized that they were still sitting on my desk, like all 3 of them. And I was like, wow. Like, it was one of those things where you go, man, like in the past, it was like I either would have been like sitting there like twitching, like, oh, I need to have that candy, or oh, I can't avoid it, or I just ate all 3 and just been like, okay. And not that would have been a problem to have all 3, but it was just like, when you get to the point where nothing's off limits and you don't feel good or bad about food, it's just like, it's a totally different game. It's like, you just look at it as like, well, I can have it or I can not have it, and it doesn't really matter. It's my choice, and it's always going to be there, and I can have it whenever. And so eventually I ate them, and yeah. So now let me see. I got some notes. I wanted to make sure I didn't forget everything. See, let's see. Talked about my story. Talked about the choice. Going in with the plan. Can't screw it up. Oh, one last thing. Big thing. No matter what you do, even if you go in with a plan to stay on track and you end up kind of blowing out and just having tons of candy, you know what? Like, it happens. Life is going to happen. Don't beat yourself up. Don't feel guilty. Just get back on track. Don't try to make up for it. For the love of God, don't look at these charts that float around on social media this time of year that say 1 piece of Kit Kat equals 30 minutes on the treadmill, or whatever the hell it is. All those stupid charts that have like different exercises it takes to burn a certain amount of calories and from certain types of candy. That's the dumbest thing ever. That's just going to enforce an even worse relationship, not only with food, but also with exercise and the process as a whole. Exercise isn't a punishment for what you did. It's to nourish the body. It's a beautiful thing. Don't screw it up by, looking at it as a punishment, and don't try to make up for it. Just get back on track. I promise you, you cannot screw everything up in one day. You can't do it in a weekend, can't do it in a week. It's just one of those things where that all or nothing mindset can just be an absolute killer. And the way we treat ourselves is probably the worst thing that we do to ourselves. And what I mean by that is like the way we have a tendency to judge ourselves, overjudge ourselves. I always say, if you wouldn't tell someone else what you're telling yourself, then don't tell yourself that either. Like, if you wouldn't beat up your friend for making a mistake, if your friend made the mistake, what would you tell him? You would say, well, no big deal, you're human, you make mistakes, get back on track. Maybe we should start treating ourselves that way too, So anyways, let's get into some Q&A here. What do we got? We got anything? Kim, what do you got to say? Hold on, I'm trying to get my live screen up here. Uno momento. Okay, I gotta move my little post-it. trying to get better with my with my flow instead of all the ums and uhs and sitting around and trying to get better so these videos are better, hopefully. So I'm always welcome to feedback. Anyway, let me make this bigger because it's not fitting in here. So let me change that, and that's not working. So let me try this. There we go. All right, my friend and I do a contest every year, who can go the longest without eating candy. It keeps me accountable, and I don't even really like candy. It just stops the mindless eating because it's around. Hold on, let me move this so I'm on here better. Oh, wrong way. That's better. So yeah, I mean, what you said in here, Kim, about you don't really even like candy, this is one of the best pieces of advice I have for people, especially like when the holiday season comes around and it's like, okay, it's Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever else. Don't eat stuff that you don't really even like just because it's there. That's one of the best strategies you can have. Again, I always say whatever you want to do is fine, and if you want to stuff yourself silly, that's fine. Just understand what that means. But like if you're in a sitting where you are going to have a lot, like why eat the stuff that you don't really even care for when there's all this good food around that you do like? Like eat the stuff that you like. Like why just eat stuff because it's there? It doesn't have to be that way. And it's a good thing to always remember, like, okay, like do I like this or not? Like no, okay, well then why have it? You know? And it's one of those things where like, it seems so obvious, seems so logical, but we don't think about that. And I think some of it too comes from when we're younger. This is something that I always tried to practice with my son, and that is not saying you have to finish everything. Like you don't have to clean up your plate. You know what I mean? Like, well, there's still food on your plate. Make sure you eat it all. I'm not hungry. Well, you need to eat it all. Well, why are we forcing our kids to teach them to overeat and eat when they're not even hungry at a young age? You know what I mean? And I think this is taught to us at a young age, so it's something to always check ourselves with. But I'm glad you like it, Kim, and that it's going well. So, no questions so far. I have 3 that were done ahead of time. I will get to those, and if we have nothing else, it'll be a short session, and that's okay. So, let me get to the other screen here. Let me hide that. Let me blow this up a little bit more. I thought I had it big enough, but I didn't. All right, so having clients track macros, what is my view on sugar alcohol tracking? I use an average of 10 grams a day, do not track. Going hand in hand with this, what's your opinion on high fiber food labels accounting for fiber in calories displayed? Thanks, you're very welcome. So, you know, sugar alcohols, they do have calories. So, I mean, they don't have to claim them as calories. You know, they can claim them as 0. It's rounding, so there's rounding on nutrition labels. And if foods have, I'm going off of memory here, but I think if it's less than 5 calories, they can claim it as 0. And if it's less than 50, they can claim it they can round to the nearest 5, I believe. And then over that, they can round to the nearest 10, something like that. I'm probably butchering it, but it's somewhere around there. But there's rounding on nutrition labels. So these foods that have just a small amount of calories, they can claim them as 0, but they do have calories. Does that mean we should absolutely claim them and worry about how many calories are in them and kind of freak out about it? No. Everyone's a little bit different. If you're trying to be as accurate as possible and it doesn't negatively affect you mentally and cause kind of an all or nothing mentality, and you want to track them, then track them. Because there are calories. Now, you can make some arguments. So like with the sugar alcohols and fiber and stuff like that they claim as like net carbs, it's a little bit of a loophole on the nutrition label in my mind, because in most of those foods, you still do get calories. So like 1 gram of carbs is 4 calories. They claim that you don't get any calories from them because it kind of goes through undigested. However, that's not entirely accurate, because in a lot of those, your body actually converts them to short chain fatty acids, and you still get maybe 2.5, somewhere around there, 2 to 3 grams or 2 to 3 calories per gram of those types of foods. So you still do get calories from them if you want to get really technical. However, I think overly obsessing about those small things is not a great thing for most people. So I usually just say, don't worry about it. Don't get too caught up in that type of stuff. You know, claiming, like, should I claim calories from my BCAAs and my sweetener and things like that? I usually just don't bother with it. And one thing that I find to be very common are the people who kind of freak out about the smaller things and trying to be absolutely perfect are the same people who then go on large, you know, just massive cheats where they eat thousands upon thousands of calories and don't worry about it. And I think usually that probably happens because of the overly restrictive nature that you're in. You know, the common thing to say is, well, I need those days. Like if I don't have those days, I'm going to go insane. I'm going to go crazy. And I think the reason for that is because you're being so hyper focused on all the small itty bitty details that in the grand scheme of things don't matter much. I'm not saying they don't matter at all, but they don't matter much. And it gets you so feeling so restricted and so like, I guess that's just the word that I'm going to use as restricted, that, yeah, you do feel like you need these days where you can just let loose. But if you were more flexible with things and weren't so stringent, maybe you wouldn't feel the need to go crazy like that. Because if you think about it, what's going to make a bigger difference? Not claiming, 10 calories worth of sugar alcohols in a day, or not claiming 5,000 calories in a cheat meal. You know what I mean? Like, let's think about what's most important here and what's going to make the biggest difference. So the bottom line is, I know that was a very long-winded way to answer this, but I don't really have many questions anyway, so I'm going to do it. And it's my channel, right? But yeah, I mean, it really comes down to what you care about the most and how you handle things mentally. And some people like to be as perfect as possible, and it doesn't bother them, and they actually like it. Like, believe it or not, some people absolutely like being as perfect as possible, crushing numbers right down to the gram, makes them feel good, they like it, it's sustainable for them. If that's you, then great. I would track them at that point if that's you. If it's not you, then I wouldn't worry about it. Plus, another thing to consider is, you said that you do about 10 grams a day. If you're doing basically the same amount every single day, whether you claim them or not doesn't really matter. What matters is that you're being consistent with that. So if you think about it, if you're getting 10 grams a day, but you're not claiming it, you're still getting that. So anytime you're going to make an adjustment to your numbers, that's already accounted for. Like, does that make sense? It's not going to make any difference on how you change your numbers, because it's the same every day anyways. So there's that to consider as well. So most of the time I say don't worry about that type of stuff. But in some instances, maybe it makes sense. And especially with like the net carbs and stuff, if you're eating a lot of it, it will make a difference. Like, some people eat a lot of net carbs thinking that it's basically free calories, when it really isn't. But it's a balancing act. It really is. And I can't say it's one set way for everybody. Everyone's a little bit different. So always consider that. Which, by the way, I'm going to get into this right away today. If you are interested in online coaching, if you want to have me help you through your process, get out of your own head and know exactly what to do, then fill out this form. I have a link in the description as always, and just go to coaching and fill out this application. I will shoot a video going over your application and shoot it to your email. If you don't see it within 24 hours, check your junk. They go there. But it seems like over 50% of the time they go into junk mail, so a lot of people don't see them. So make sure you're checking that. And you know what? Like, it does come with a 30-day money-back guarantee, meaning that if you decide the coaching's not for you, then you can ask for a refund. I don't even ask any questions. I say, okay, I understand. Here's your refund, and wishing you all the best. And it can be for any reason. So it is literally risk-free if you're considering it. All right, let's see if we got some questions here. I've worn a Fitbit for years now, and when I exercise, I've always given myself back those calories burned into my total caloric allowance for the day. What are you using that? I would not be doing that. It's backwards. Like, you're using your exercise as a means to help create the deficit, especially if we're talking about cardio here. Strength training is a little bit different. That's for a whole different topic, but they do obviously still burns calories. I just don't really like the view of only looking at that's. Let me back up for a second. I don't like looking at exercise as just for the calories burned, because it's so much more than that. But at the same time, we do things like increase our walking and cardio and stuff like that to create more calorie burn, to be able to put you into a deficit, to help with a deficit, to be able to lose fat. And if you're eating that back, then you're undoing that extra deficit that you're trying to give yourself. So why would we do that? I know that MyFitnessPal often says, eat your calories back. I think it's terrible advice personally. Where you're better off just being consistent with your nutrition and your exercise, and then seeing how things go and monitor and adjust. But if you're eating your burned calories back, you're kind of undoing the point of the more cardio based expenditure that you're getting from it. So no, I do not recommend that personally. And keep in mind too, especially that these numbers are highly inaccurate. Like, you don't know how many calories are burning. Just because your Fitbit says you're burning 300 calories in a workout doesn't mean you are. There's been research that's shown that they can be up to 80% off. 80% off. So if you're trying to eat back calories from calories burned from a workout and it's off by 80%, that's a problem. You know what I mean? So I think they're a good idea to see your general activity, see if you're keeping up with your normal activity, if you're pushing yourself more or less, and seeing how you may be a little bit off on any given week. And it's great for knowing your activity levels. It's not so great for trying to predict actual calories burned. So I wouldn't look at it for that. How to transition from macro counting to flexible dieting, intuitive eating. I want to maintain high protein diet and find it a little difficult outside of home food prep. So when you're on a more like macro tracking plan, doing more flexible dieting, the mistake a lot of people make is they try to go from tracking everything immediately into just nothing but eating intuitively. And it has to be taken in steps. I have a video about this called How to Eat Intuitively Without Gaining Weight, I believe is the exact title. If you look that up and want to watch it, it'll go into more detail. But basically the premise is, one, when you're done dieting, you want to make sure you reverse out first and get yourself into a better spot hormonally before trying to eat intuitively. Because what happens is we get done dieting, we're tired of tracking, we don't want to deal with it anymore. Mentally, you're not going to be seeing the fat loss result anymore, so it's less motivating, and we just go, I just don't want to deal with this anymore. But your hunger hormones are all out of whack from the dieting. They're in a terrible place. And if you just try to start eating intuitively right then, your intuition is going to be to eat everything, like everything. And it can go very poorly. You can gain weight very fast. You want to put yourself in a spot first where you're in a better spot. So now once your hunger hormones start to settle down, you're not so overly food focused, you're not quite so hungry all the time, you're in a good spot, your calories are higher. Now you start transitioning to a more intuitive eating approach where, okay, maybe one day you start incorporating an untracked meal or untracked day, and then maybe you try 2 or 3 days, and then you kind of wean yourself off the tracking, seeing how things are going, and take it from there versus just this, I'm tracking like crazy to no tracking. That's a recipe for disaster. And I think the other thing that a lot of people struggle with when it comes to tracking versus not tracking is a lot of times we feel like, well, I'm tired of tracking, so I don't want to track anymore. But it's actually not the tracking that you're having a problem with. Not saying that everyone should be tracking forever, not at all. Some people, yes, some people know, everyone's different. But it's not really tracking that you're tired of. It's being tired of not being able to eat pizza, donuts, and hamburgers and hot dogs and fit it into your numbers. You know what I mean? So is it you don't want to track, or is it you just don't want to see what it would look like if you were to eat the way you really wanted to eat? Because after you've been tracking for a long time, you know what a normal meal and a normal day looks like. You know what's in the foods you eat. You know what normal eating habits look like. So if you stop tracking and then just continue to eat the way you normally eat, you're going to be in a very similar spot, and that's going to keep you in a pretty good place. But if you stop tracking and then completely change your eating habits because now you're not tracking, that's a problem. And that's one of the big struggles I think a lot of people have. Some people just need that extra accountability of tracking to keep themselves in check. So it's a balancing act. But hopefully that helps. And then with the food prep, the home food prep, I think part of that too is just kind of the all or nothing mindset, feeling like if you don't know exactly what's in it, then there's no point kind of a thing. And again, we want to be more flexible with that. If you're going to go out to eat, just look for the actual nutrition online and see if they have that. Use that. If they don't have it, use something that's similar from a restaurant that does have it online and use that. And even if there's nothing available at all, just give it some sort of value. Give it a best guess. The last thing you want to do is go, well, I don't know what's in this, so what's the point? And then, having the most calorie dense meal you can find, and then having dessert and washing it down with 4 beers and then going home and having ice cream. You know what I mean? That's the problem. So don't get too caught up in it. And you're never going to know if it's right or wrong, and if it's off or not. And a lot of people go, oh, I must have been more calories than I thought because I jumped up on the scale a couple pounds the next day. And no, when you go out to eat, it's usually going to be just loaded with sodium. And when you have more sodium than usual, you retain more water until you pee it out. So it could have been spot on for all you know, but just because you're up in weight the next day, you didn't gain 2 pounds of fat. And you never gain 2 pounds of fat in one day. It's just water weight. All the fluctuations in scale weight are. So just giving it some sort of value and being okay and just calling it good is fine. And plus, even if there is nutrition available, it's not like the cooks are back there like measuring out your butter and your olive oil and you know what I mean? Like they're just throwing it together, trying to make it taste good and sending it out. So it might be close, it might be not, but it's at least going to keep you in the ballpark by giving it some sort of value. So, hey Jake. I'm not a big fan of the cardio either. Yes, you can lose weight with strength training alone. So it's just you're going to have to eat less calories. So the cardio is one of those things that it helps create more of a calorie burn. So if you would prefer to do less cardio, you're going to have to eat less calories to create that deficit. If you like to eat more food, you might want to do more cardio so that you can eat more food. It's a balancing act for you. Most people are typically going to have to do at least some cardio, not always. The biggest cut I ever did when I had let things go for quite a while back in 2014? Question mark? So we're in there. I got to like 210 pounds, which I'm like 176 right now. I went from 210 to 180, just below 180, and it was like an 11-month process. And I just totally lost track of where I was going with it. Oh, I didn't do any cardio. Sorry. So I literally didn't do cardio at all. It was all calorie deficit, strength training, and I got there. But I would have been able to eat more food had I done cardio. I still recommend at least some cardio, even if you hate it, like just at least some. Can you get like 30 to 60 minutes for the week, just for the general health benefits, the fact that it will allow for a bit more food, the fact that it helps with work capacity in the gym, but really just the health benefits that come with it. Plus, I had found, even when I had gotten better shape, I remember one time the real eye-opener for me was I was on the phone with somebody and I was just kind of like walking around the living room, kind of pacing back and forth while I was talking to them. And all of a sudden I like sat down and I was like having a hard time like keeping my conversation with them because I was like winded. And I'm like, okay, this is the problem. I need some sort of cardio in my life. And I do recommend it. And just look for different options that you like. Maybe part of why you hate it is because you're doing stuff that you don't like. And maybe you would prefer some lower intensity, maybe some higher intensity, and everyone's a little bit different. But yeah, bottom line is you can lose weight without cardio, but most need at least some need a lot. It really just kind of depends on where you're at metabolically, how low calorie you can go, etc. Thank you, Kim. Let me see. Anytime, happy to help. And yeah, you definitely want to, that's the big thing, like I mentioned. You want to keep up with your normal habits and not just switch because you're not tracking. Yeah, exactly. I know a lot of people don't like tracking, and I know it's something that I push a lot. And I try to also mention that it's not necessarily something you have to do for the rest of your life, but it's such a valuable tool if you've never done it consistently for any amount of time, just because it teaches you so much. It's kind of like the old adage, what is it? Give the man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, he eats for his life, or something like that. You know what I mean? It's kind of the same type of thing. Like, everyone wants to be able to eat intuitively, but how can you be intuitive if you have no clue what's in the food you eat? You know what I mean? Like, it then just becomes what most people struggle with, is just looking at foods as good or bad. Eat this, don't eat that. I eliminated this food and I lost weight, so that food must be bad. When it's like, no, you eliminated that food, so you eliminated calories and therefore put yourself in a calorie deficit and lost weight. And then, then I added the donuts back in and I gained weight. Well, you added calories back in, probably a lot more. You probably felt restricted and overdid it and gained weight. So it's not that the food makes you fat or makes you thin. It's all about like your overall. Obviously it's not just calories, we've talked about that many times, but it is a calorie balance type of equation. And it's just, there's so much value in learning what portion sizes really look like. What's in the foods you eat. How many calories they have. What has good protein. Things like that. So that over time you learn a lot and know what things should look like. But if you don't take that time to build the knowledge base first, then it's going to be a struggle. It really is, and it's oftentimes going to create that unhealthy relationship with food. So everyone's different. Never take anything I say and say this just applies to every single person across the board and there's no other circumstances. Like, no, there's a lot of variance, but I think for the most part, most people would benefit greatly from at least taking a handful of months and tracking diligently and seeing what things look like and learning so that they can take that and then apply that into a more intuitive eating approach later, because now they know what things look like. But if you don't do that first, how are you going to know? We make a lot of assumptions of what things look like, but that's not necessarily the truth. The biggest thing that I see that people misunderstand is like high sugar foods. People that look at high sugar foods usually point to sources of food that actually have more fat calories than sugar calories, like, you know, donuts and you know, like maybe higher fat ice creams and things like that. These foods, they have sugar, but what people like, it's usually not sugar. It's sugar mixed with fat. So high carb and high fat, low protein, very tasty with the sugar. But a lot of times they're going to have, so remember, 1 gram of carbs has 4 calories, 1 gram of fat has 9 calories. So those fat calories add up very fast. It's more than double the calories of a carb. And when you put the two together, combine it with sugar, it tastes amazing. But it's not sugar. You're not like sitting there like, you know, down in pixie sticks and going, sugar. You know what I mean? It's not usually like straight sugar. It's sugar mixed with higher fat foods that is really good. Tasty, I should say. No problem. If I sit all day, if I don't make it a duty to walk for an hour, I can't even make 10,000 steps. Is there something? I average 1,500 to 3,000 steps per day. However, on the days that I lift, when I go make my 10,000 steps, I notice my recovery is poor. All I do is walk, but my areas have 2 hills. How can I make 10,000 steps without having to go for daily 3-mile walks? Well, I mean, you're going to have to. Like, if you want to get those steps, and the only way to do that is by getting more steps. So I don't really know how to answer that, because, like, I mean, you can go for little walks throughout the day. It doesn't have to be like one big giant walk. You can get up and move around more, and that's going to help get those steps up. And consider too that it's more about an average for the week, so it doesn't have to be done every single day. You can have some higher days and some lower days, and perhaps that would help with recovery too, if you're getting a couple days of the lower activity to help with recovery and then more on other days. But it's a balancing act, and I don't know how helpful that was, but yeah. Can you start a reverse diet at the end of a diet break? Is it better to start with lower calories from a cutting week? You can do either. So that is a common approach I will take with people, is even if they're coming from a deficit and then they're jumping into a reverse diet, that first week might be basically a diet break. It's like, okay, let's take it as a diet break, bump up calories a bit more, bring down the cardio, see how things go, and then start from there, because that's going to be safer for people, especially who are already losing. It's a little bit different if you've been kind of stuck for a while, because now you aren't technically in a deficit anymore. But if you're still in a deficit, you can more safely jump up calories faster if your concern is gaining more weight. So as always, right, it's a balancing act. So the faster you increase calories, the more likely you are to gain weight, but the faster you're going to feel better and everything. The slower you increase calories, the less likely you are to gain. What's most important to you? So it can be taken either different way. There's no hard, fast rules, so to speak. But that's definitely an approach I take commonly. Kind of depends on what's most important to you. But I do recommend at least a decent jump that first week, just to kind of get things going, but not necessarily a full diet break. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I was trying to say, is if you get up and just move around a little bit more, that stuff can add up a lot more than people think too. Like, if you just get up and go take 300 steps, a handful of times, that's something, you know what I mean? And just trying to get up and move around is helpful. All right, let's get back to some of the other questions I have since I'm all caught up. All right. Oop, I need to expand this. I haven't done yo-yo dieting, just low calories, for a long time, like maybe 3 years. Decided to reverse diet for 6 months, shot for 1,600 calories, then ate till I was full for weeks and checked my calories, which is about 1,400. I thought I was cutting back my calories, but not losing any weight. Was going to eat at maintenance for another 4 months, which kind of makes it a total of 10 months into a sloppy reverse. Question is, would it be safe to start following 3 months on, 2 months off? Well, I mean, first of all, with the with the 3 years of being on low calories, your body's going to be really adapted to that. So, that's the first thing to consider. So, I mean, it's not necessarily better that you were super low calorie instead of yo-yo dieting. It is in terms of not gaining a bunch of weight, but metabolically speaking, you're going to be super adapted to those lower calories by being on them straight for 3 years. With the yo-yo dieting, you're going to get some benefit to your metabolism when you overdo it. Unfortunately, not to make up for the weight that you gain. So the big difference between that, the reverse dieting, the yo-yo dieting versus being on low calories forever is when you yo-yo diet, you don't get much of a benefit to your metabolism, maybe a little, but then you're gonna gain a bunch of weight. When you just stay in the low calories, you're not really gonna gain any weight, but you're gonna be that much more adapted. So the yo-yo dieting doesn't necessarily mean that your metabolism's in a worse place than just staying low calorie all the time. Just to clarify that, you might not have even meant that, but I'm just making a clarification for everybody. But after 3 years, you're pretty dang adapted. And then 1,600 calories sounds like, let me see, for weeks, I don't know how many weeks to 1,400, but you're probably going to start adapting down to that at that point too, at least a little bit. So it really depends on how your body would respond. If you tried to get more aggressive and try to lose from that point, it would have to be pretty low calorie again already right away. And it's one of those things where if your body doesn't respond, like we've talked about, Tammy, I know we've talked about this personally, that okay, like get after it and see, but if it's not there, you want to get out because you haven't had a ton of time compared to the 3 years that you were on those low calories. So as always, the longer you can stay on higher calories, the better off you're going to be, especially if you can get your calories up more again. 1,400 is already pretty low comparative or relatively. Again, everyone's different, and I know you're not a larger person to begin with, so we always have to take that into consideration. But with regards to the 3 months on, 2 months off, I mean, that's fine. But you don't want to just force it. Like if it's not there, if you start dieting and you can't lose, like don't just keep doing it because you want to lose. You get out. You need more time. And the longer you try to stay on those lower calories, the worse off you're going to be. So as always, be patient and just kind of see. But I always encourage as much as possible, stay on the high calories the longer you can, especially this time of year. Like there's 2 months left at the end of the year. We've got the holidays coming up. Like why not use this time to be in a better spot metabolically, enjoy some more food and flexibility during a time that is usually a bit more difficult, not for everybody, but for a lot of people. And it just gives you that much more time. The more time you have, the better. But it doesn't mean, if you can drop your calories and you can lose and you can adhere to the plan, then great, do it. You know what I mean? And you're very welcome. All right, one more, and then that's going to be it, unless somebody else chimes in with anything. I'm going to have to remove myself for this one. All right. Can you build muscle and lose fat at the same time? What would you suggest for somebody like myself who has a lot of fat to lose? Would it be longer, harder process, or should I focus on one thing at a time instead of both? So it is possible. How do I get rid of that? It is possible to lose fat and build muscle at the same time, especially if you have a lot of weight to lose, and especially if you are new to training. So if you're new to training and have a lot of weight to lose, that's the most likely time that you're most likely to be able to do both. The more experienced you are, the more difficult it becomes, and it becomes extremely unlikely once you become very experienced. And then you for sure need to take them one step at a time. Focus on building, then focus on cutting. Right now, you might be in a position to be able to do both, and I would suggest it, especially from a health standpoint. If you have a lot of weight to lose, you're going to want to get some of that weight off to get down to a more normal body fat range, just for the health benefits, and that's priority number one. Don't make the mistake of, well, I'm going to start strength training after I lose the weight. That's a massive mistake a lot of people make. Use it to your advantage. The strength training and any potential muscle you build, or at least keep, is going to significantly help your fat loss progress. So if you can get the best of both worlds, why would you not do it? And it's one of those things. So there's basically 3 scenarios where you can lose fat and build muscle simultaneously. One is you're new to training, especially if you're obese. The second is if you had a long layoff. So say you're not new to training, but you haven't trained in a long time. Well, coming back from it, muscle memory is very real, and you will build way faster than it took to build the first time. So you'll be able to build and lose simultaneously at that point. And then the third scenario is if you're basically on steroids, then it's very easy to do so. Obviously not my recommendation, although everyone's free to live their life the way they want, but I definitely don't personally recommend it. Everyone's different, but those are the main scenarios where it's more likely. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't. Like, if you are more experienced, you may be able to do both, but you're just never gonna know. A lot of people think they're building muscle and losing fat simultaneously just because they see their muscles popping more when they lose weight, but it's not because they've built muscles, because they've reduced their fat that was covering their muscles that make the muscles look bigger. I remember when I was in my prep couple of years back, I was like 15 pounds down, and on a handful of times people made the comment like, "Oh man, you're looking big," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm actually like 15 pounds down," but thank you, and it's because the muscles start displaying so much more when you take the fat off, and that's basically what toned means: less fat, more muscle. So you're in your situation, I would lose as much as you can, and then once your body starts fighting you too much, and or you're just kind of totally over it, then switch phases and take it in phases. Don't get caught up into, I need to lose all the weight at one time, and if I can't get there, then screw it, that so many people fall into. No, your body's gonna fight. It's hard to lose all the weight you want in one attempt, and it's okay that you don't. You got your whole life ahead of you. So lose as much as you can, then reverse back out, give your body plenty of time, and then take the next phase, and then reverse out, take the next phase. So even if you lose 20 to 30 pounds and then gain 10 back, like if you keep doing that over and over again, you're going in the right direction. If you lose 30 and gain 10 and lose 30 and gain 10 and lose 30 and gain 10, you're going the right way. I'm not saying that you should expect it to happen that exact way. I'm just saying don't get caught up in oh man, if I gain a little bit of weight back during the reverse, I've screwed up and I'm a failure. Absolutely not. The leaner you are, the more experienced you are, the more it's better to focus on one thing at a time. But either way, it doesn't really change much, because either way, you should be strength training pretty much the same whether you're cutting or building, right? Because you're using one to build muscle, you're using the other to retain the muscle that you have built. So it doesn't really change unless you are switching to maintenance mode and you're just trying to back off things and you're happy with the way things are. You just kind of roughly maintain. You want a little bit more time. You still have to strength train, but you can back off some, because it's much easier to maintain muscle than it is to build it. So you don't need anywhere near as much volume to retain what you have, especially if you're out of a calorie deficit, if that makes sense. Thank you, Jennifer. Awesome. Glad that you're doing well, and for sure, cutting is tricky. We just most of it's mental. So much of it is mental. Cardio is definitely must for a tiny person like me. Otherwise, I'd have to starve. Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to each person, and some people have to do tons of cardio, and there's just no way around it. And I think a big thing too that is important is accepting your own personal reality. Like, even if you don't like cardio, if it's going to require a lot more to be able to get your result, then you just have to accept that, right? And not, if you're always focused on, oh, I hate cardio, I don't want to do this, it sucks, I hate it, like, how are you going to stick to it? Like, you're going to be miserable the whole time. So if you flip that mental switch to, okay, like, maybe I don't like cardio that much, but I've got to do it. It's part of the process. It's what I need to do to get where I want to be, and accept that. Total game changer. And it just changes everything. So some people are going to do a lot more, and some people don't need to do as much, but we don't want to compare to anybody else. We can't change our own personal realities, and we just have to accept that. And like I said, it's kind of a balancing act of what you want more food or less cardio. So keep going. It's going pretty well. So if you aren't following me on Instagram, I am documenting my cutting progress on Instagram. So every 2 weeks, I'm coming in and making a post about how things are going, and what I've been doing, what the progress has been like. I also put out numbers in terms like, okay, here's the waist measurement, calories and protein. I'm not doing macros right now. I'm doing just calories and protein. I just find it much more flexible, and I just like it that much more. So that's what I've been doing this time, rather than being in strict macros. And okay, am I going on a diet break, or what am I doing this week? What am I changing? What are my thoughts? What am I struggling with? And cover all that type of stuff, kind of like I used to do in different series on YouTube, but I'm just doing it on Instagram now. So this right here is 6 weeks worth of progress so far. One of those weeks being a diet break. I'm currently on a 2-week diet break right now, and things are going pretty well. Like in terms of weight, I'm not losing a ton. I'm down. What did I say here? Let me see. 6 weeks total. I got it in here somewhere. 5.33 pounds. So a little bit less than a pound per week. And I think that's a good thing to always to consider. Like, so many people feel like if you're only losing a pound or whatever, that it's terrible. And it's like, no, you can make significant progress only losing a pound. It's just, it adds up over time. And consider too that sometimes body composition changes more than the weight is showing up, and we just don't want to get too focused on that scale number. I don't care if this was a 0 pound weight loss. If I saw this change in my body with no weight loss, then why would I be upset about that? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not here to weigh a certain number on a scale. I'm trying to look better. I'm trying to lean out, and that's happening. So, and the thing that for me right now that has been kind of fun is I'm noticing, and I think perhaps some of it is my training has improved over the last couple of months. I got more serious about it. I hired a coach because I was just kind of floundering around in the gym and just not really following things closely. I mean, I was still showing up, but there's no real purpose to it. So I said, okay, time to hire a coach, get some extra accountability, have someone who can be objective with myself. And this is why coaching can be so beneficial outside of the how to do things. And so my training improved significantly. So perhaps I am getting a little recomp, building a little bit of muscle back and losing fat simultaneously. But I'm noticing some real nice changes in the mirror. And changes in the mirror always show up so much better than pictures do. It just does not show up on pictures the same way. Like, not that this is bad progress by any stretch of the imagination, but the changes I'm seeing look so much better than this. Like, I'm noticing so much detail through here, like through my obliques and everything. Like, it's really starting to show up, and that's got me pretty excited. So I don't really care what the number says, but it's going well. I'm taking this break, and then I'll come back, probably get a little bit more aggressive and make that next push. I don't know how far I'm going to go. I'm just going to kind of go based on feel and how things are going, and I'll stop when I'm over it. So thank you. My thoughts on the whoosh effect are that I don't think it's true. It is obviously true that sometimes you see a big drop on the scale and it just sticks around after you might have even been stuck for a while, and all of a sudden, boom, you see a big drop and it just sticks. But the whoosh effect is hypothesized to be where you lose fat from your fat cells. That space that used to have fat in it now gets taken up by water, and then eventually the water drains out and you see that big drop on the scale. The first time I heard that, I thought, man, that just makes a lot of sense, and that's why we see this. It must be true. Now, I completely don't agree with that, because I see the exact same thing happen in a reverse diet. You might be stable, and you might be staying the exact same weight for weeks on end on a reverse, and then all of a sudden, boom, you see a 2-pound increase on the scale, and then it doesn't go back down again. So, and then it happens frequently, just like it happens in a cut. You might be the same, and then boom, see a big drop on the scale when you're cutting. Well, if it was water that was filling up the fat cells and then releasing, how does that happen in a reverse? You know what I mean? It doesn't just like suck it all in and just stay there forever. So, to me, logically, it just wouldn't make sense for that to be true. I'm not saying it's not true. It certainly hasn't been proven that it is true. But whether that's what happens or not is kind of irrelevant. What is relevant is that it does happen. So sometimes you'll just be stuck and things aren't moving, and then you see a big drop. Why that happens, I don't know, but it does happen. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I just did a video was that last week? Maybe the week before, that talked about a 1,200 calorie meal plan, and had an example of what that can look like, and talked about kind of the potential drawbacks of going too low calorie, but also talked about how I'm really sick of people jumping right to 1,200 calories in both directions, meaning we don't want to just throw people on 1,200 calories right away, because that might be way too low calorie for a lot of people. But at the same time, we don't want to say you should never go to 1,200 calories, because smaller people, especially with more of a dieting history, are possibly going to have to do that. And I think a lot of people can't see progress because people tell them that they shouldn't go on that low of calorie, so they're afraid to drop their calories, and they're stuck, and that's what they need to do to see progress. And if they would, then that'd be fine. So it's like, if you need to get that low and you still feel okay, you're still performing well, you're not overly food focused, and everything's going fine, then that's great. Like, no matter what, you're gonna have to reverse diet out anyways. But we don't want to just put everybody into a box like so many people do. And some people are just gonna have to be more aggressive than others. Even larger people, like some people have to get that low. Like, even though you're not that small, doesn't mean that you won't necessarily have to get that low. But you always want to check your adherence too. The biggest reason people can't lose weight on 1,200 calories is because they're not actually eating 1,200 calories. They're eating much more. They're doing way too much eyeballing portion sizes and not accounting for extra bites and nibbles and licks and cheat meals and everything else. Whereas if they added up their entire week, they're probably eating like 1,800 calories and not 1,200 calories. That's the biggest. Not everybody. Nobody take offense to that, but it happens a lot. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Not everybody can, and some people can too, and that's the frustrating thing. Like, people take what's happening to themselves and apply it to everybody. I've had comments like that on YouTube, and like one of my it's been a long time now. It was a video called Reverse Dieting Success Stories or something like that, and I showed 3 different examples of people who went through the reverse process and then cut down and got where they want to be. And the point of that video was to show people that you don't want to get too overly concerned about what's happening during the reverse. It's about setting yourself up for the eventual success. So I showed one example where somebody gained a lot of weight, but they still reached their goal. Another example where somebody gained like more of a, I hate to use the word normal because there's no such thing as normal, but a more moderate, lesser amount of weight. And during the reverse, got where they wanted to be through the cut. And then another person who was like the hyper responder, who just like saw ridiculous improvements in body composition during the reverse diet, and then cut afterwards and just got super lean. And somebody made a comment about, because I showed the numbers too, and I said, well, okay, by the end of this person's cut, they're around 1,300 calories and doing 3 hours of cardio or whatever it was. Oh, somebody should never be on 1,300 calories. This is a terrible example. You're showing people that they should eat those low calories, and I'm like, this is what it took for her. This is what she had to do. And first of all, I didn't throw her right on 1,300 calories right away. That was what she finished her cut on. You're not gonna finish your cut on what you started on, because your body's gonna adapt, and you need to make changes to keep the progress going. But she took the time to reverse. She got into a good spot metabolically to get down to where she needed to be. That's what she had to do. I'm not gonna not put her on 1,300 calories if she can adhere and get the result. I'm not gonna do it because it's too low to you. And her response was, I'm X weight, height, whatever, and I've never had to go below 1,500 calories. I'm like, well, that's great for you, but you're not her. You're not everybody else. So stop trying to take what happens to you and apply it to the whole world. Like, I had somebody else say too, like, well, everyone should just do 100 calorie increases every week during the reverse. And I go, no, most people aren't going to do very well with that and gain a lot of weight. Some people can, that's fine. He goes, well, I did it, and I did that for 8 weeks, and I lost weight. Again, good for you. But I can tell you from hundreds of clients of experience that that's not going to work for most people. So just because something goes well for you doesn't mean that applies to everyone. Side rant over. Yes, so much of the cut is mental, and as like. Yeah, and I'm very, very happy to help. You've been crushing it, and you're in such a different place mentally, and that's why it's going so well. One of the things that we've talked about is I think a lot of people struggle with sticking to a plan because they're worried about what might or might not happen. So they never really follow through because they're so worried. And it's like, man, let's just do it. Like, do it and see. Just see what happens. Like, follow it. And it always feels better to follow through and do it. Even if you don't get a great result, it feels great to just stick with it. Especially when you don't feel like doing it and you do it anyways. Like, that builds pride, that builds momentum. Motivation comes from doing, right? Like, not like sitting around and just waiting for it to show up. It doesn't work that way. You get more motivated because you make yourself proud by doing things when you aren't motivated. And man, just making that mental switch to not get so caught up in the result and just focus on crushing the process and then making adjustments. It just makes all the difference in the world. We get so in our head so much of the time, and that's usually where the result comes from, is getting this thing right. It's not figuring out like what to do. There's practically an infinite amount of ways to do this stuff, and you can get amazing results doing a lot of different things. You can do a lot of things wrong and get fantastic results if you just stop giving up every time it gets hard. You know what I mean? I've been doing a strength training program 5x5. I try to push to where I can do 1 or 2 more reps. I feel like I'm working hard, but I'm rarely sore for the next day. Add sets, vary exercises. You shouldn't be striving to be sore from your workouts. And in fact, if you're always sore from your workouts, that means something's wrong with your training program. And the soreness is one of those things, like I get it. It feels like you're making progress and everything, but the reason that most people are sore a lot is because they're changing up their program all the time. They're always doing something different every time that they show up to the gym, and their body can't adapt, and therefore they're always sore. So you have to understand, especially when it comes to like building muscle, the progress you make happens because of adaptation. Adaptation forces change. So what you want to do is give the body a stimulus, let it adapt to that stimulus, and then recover from it, and then give it a new stimulus. But if you're changing things up and trying to confuse your muscles and everything, then your body has no idea what's coming its way, and it has no reason to adapt because it doesn't know what it needs to adapt to. The best example I always come up with for this is think about like someone who has an office job and then gets a job doing something much more active. Like say you were sitting in front of a computer 8 hours a day and very sedentary outside of the workplace, and then you get a job in construction. Well, you show up to work and you're doing all this heavy labor. The next day you wake up just sore as hell because your body's not used to it. But you can't call into work sore. You got to show up to work, right? So you go in the next day and you're sore and tired, but you get through it. Next day, sore and tired, show back up, get through it. Eventually your body will stop being so tired and sore because your body gets used to it and adapts to it. This is called the repeated bout effect, which basically states that the body becomes more adept at repairing and recovering itself from the stimulus you give it. Training works in a very similar manner. So if you start something fresh and new, you're probably going to be sore at first because your body is not used to it. After a couple weeks of this, your body starts to get used to it. You're no longer sore anymore. And then this is why if you train for a while, like you train and then you deload, then you start something fresh, you're probably sore at first. You get used to it, deload, and that kind of repeats. But if you're sore all the time, that's a problem. So don't chase soreness. You shouldn't never be sore, but you shouldn't be sore all the time either. So if you're not taking your training in specific blocks and changing things up after a block of training, then that's the first thing I would do is, okay, make sure you're deloading and starting something fresh. It doesn't have to be completely fresh, but changing things up somewhat. But yeah, hopefully that helps. Yep, Kim, you're a perfect example of, you know what, like you just you're like, sometimes you got to get lower calorie than what people think you should, and that's okay. As long as, again, it's all about if you can adhere to it or not. Cool. Okay, I need coffee. Tammy, watch for my video this week. It's going to be out Monday or Tuesday, and it's going to be about reverse diet weight gain. And I have one too that I would strongly recommend. It's called Reverse Dieting Afraid to Gain Weight or something like that. Or something like that. Let's find it. We got time. Let's find it. Let's make this normal sized. Colin DeWaay. Afraid to gain weight? Question mark? That's just a normal afraid to gain weight video, which I do recommend. This is actually a good one too, how to deal with reverse diet weight gain, but it's not the one I'm looking for. Oh, this is it. Scared to gain weight. Or scared to reverse diet, must watch. I would watch that one. I have about 2 years of heavy training. Is recomp possible for a novice lifter? If I'm maybe midway through a reverse and don't want to gain past 10 pounds. It's less likely after 2 years, not impossible, but the more, like I said before, the more experienced you are, the less likely it's possible. Don't get caught up in a number. Like, I'm not saying that you should force yourself past 10 pounds, but don't get caught up on 10 pounds either, especially if things are going really well. Like if you're barely gaining any noticeable fat and you're still putting on muscle like crazy, like should you expect that? No, but don't get caught up in a number just because you don't want to. And so many people, this is a different, like, most people, or I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people get stuck on, well, I want to build muscle, but I don't want to gain weight. And it's like, well, you do understand that muscle has weight, right? Like it's not free. You put muscle on your frame and you have more weight on your frame. So I get it. Like we've been so conditioned to be so hyper focused on that scale, especially for females. But it's so good to not be afraid of that number and not judge everything based on it. Especially if you have goals to build more muscle, you over time, at some point, you're going to have to gain weight. Maybe not right away, but at some point, if you want more muscle, the scale is going to have to go up. And that's a scary thing, but that's why we don't want to focus only on it. And just don't go too fast, because going really fast isn't going to build you more muscle anyways. You only need a small surplus to really optimally build, and going way above and beyond that, like a dirty crazy bulk, isn't going to build you more muscle. It's just going to accumulate more fat that you'll have to take on down the road. So you only need a small surplus. So just take your time. Advice for nighttime hunger. I can't count how many times I've stayed right on track with my macros and calories throughout the day, but then ruin it at night at the end of the day. So one strategy that can be helpful is saving up calories for the end of the day. I think a lot of people hear things like, well, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and this and that and the other, and they feel like they have to eat during certain times when they might not even be that hungry. And therefore, at the end of the night, if your genetics kind of just dictate to you that you're typically hungrier at night, like I am, I always have been my whole life, even as a kid, I've always been hungry at night, never in the morning. But if you're eating all these calories earlier in the day because you feel like you have to, and then you're still hungry at night, it makes it easier to overshoot your calories. So you can save up calories, and that's what I do. Like right now I'm on my cutting lower macros or calories were 2,200, and I probably eat about 500 to 600 calories for lunch and dinner, and then have 1,000, maybe a little bit more for right before bed, because that's just how I like to eat. And I am hungry at night, so I want to have those calories to enjoy at that point. So that's a strategy you can take. For some people, though, that doesn't work well, because if they save up calories, they get to the end of the night and now they're so ravenous that they just go absolutely insane, and it can cause even more problems. So you have to understand yourself a little bit better, but that is a strategy you can take. Make sure you're focusing on protein and fiber to help with the hunger. And if you're just absolutely ravenous and feel like you have to eat, focus on high protein foods. Protein is the safest overeat. Just did a video recently about how there's some research that showed that people ate as much as 800 calories more on per average per day through protein and didn't gain any more body fat. So if you're really ravenously hungry, eat a big thing of egg whites or chicken breast or tuna or whatever, and that will help with hunger more than anything. It's the most filling macronutrient there is, and very unlikely to be stored as much body fat anyways. So that can help as well. Not big changes. I would have to know so much more about you, Tammy, but there's something going on. I mean, obviously we all have genetics, like everyone's got different genetics, and maybe there's something about you, but I would say that there's probably something about your training that's the reason for it. And most of the time I find it's just random workouts. Like you're just doing stuff randomly with no real structure, and that's why. Not saying that's you, maybe it's not, but it's the most common reason. I'm in college and have a meal plan. I used to have an athletic look, but I lost all my progress with drinking and eating junk. How do I get back at counting my macros now in college? So that's a tough one. Not because you can't do it, just because I'm trying to understand a way to say this that doesn't sound bad. I think oftentimes when we get into certain situations in life where we're more busy than we're used to, we feel like we can't do something like pay more attention to macros, when in reality we can. It just is going to require a bit more effort, but it doesn't mean it can't be done. I mean, it always can be done. But maybe for you, a better strategy than counting macros would be something that I've been doing a lot more of lately, and doing it for myself, and that is just count calories and protein. So don't get so caught up in, okay, I need exact, this many carbs and this many fat and this and that, and trying to get too hyper focused on that. Just have a calorie target, have a protein target, and try to hit those within a range. Try to stay within like maybe 50 calories on average per week, and get it within 5 to 10 grams of protein on average, not every single day, just on average, but for the week. And if you're not sure where things are at right now, just start tracking, see what your normal habits look like, see what's happening with your weight, and then adjust based on that. And that can be a good start. But the biggest thing is don't fall into all or nothing. Don't feel like, well, if I can't be perfect, then there's no point. Focus, even just focusing on protein alone can be a great start for a lot of people, because just naturally you tend to eat less when you eat more protein, because it is so filling. And it's just one of the most beneficial things you can do. One of the most underrated parts of this whole process is by far eating more protein. And it's just so beneficial. And especially if you want a more athletic look too, muscles built through protein. So you got to get back into training. You got to get back into eating more protein, and don't let college be a reason why you can't track. And again, I'm not saying you have to track. There's ways to do this stuff without tracking, but it can certainly be done. And I don't mean that negatively at all. I'm not like calling you out. I'm not doing anything like that. It's just I've seen it. Like it's just. Everyone's so different. I mean, sometimes I'll get people who are single moms who go to school and work multiple jobs, got 3 kids, and they crush their macros every day and train 5 days a week and get 3 hours of cardio in. And then you've got somebody else who's retired with no children at home and always say that they're too busy to work out 2 or 3 times a week and track. You know what I mean? Like, there's always time for the things that are most important to you, and we all have to determine what our own priorities are, and that's really what it is priorities, more so than time. And I'm not calling anybody out. It's just the truth. And like I never have any problems with somebody saying that something's not a priority for them. That's fine. We get to choose our own priorities. But saying that we don't have time, not exactly. Yeah, happy to help. There you go. That's rare. If everyone loved protein, my job would be a lot easier. A lot easier. On the community page, please post it in here if you can. Well, hold on. Let me go back. It'd be easier if it was in the chat, but I'll do it for you because I'm a giver. Let me see. Where was I? Okay. All right, let me get rid of myself here. All right. But trying to lose weight at this point, I'm pretty burnt out. Since April, I'm down 32 pounds. Great job. I think I want to start a powerlifting program and maybe get into a slight surplus. I love hearing that. But I'm so scared to gain fat back. These last 6 months have been rough trying to get my fat down. Should I just keep going with what I'm probably doing? No, I would say don't keep going. If you're completely over what you're doing, trying to force it is the worst mistake you can possibly make, because it's just not there. It's only gonna fight you more. Things are only gonna get worse, and you're only gonna be that much more likely to fall into effort mode and completely give up. I'm not saying that as an attack on you. It's just a normal human behavior, and the more you try to force it, like it's just not a good situation. I try to have this conversation all the time with people. It's like, if it's not there, just because you're not where you want to be doesn't mean you should keep going and force it. Like, listen to yourself. If it's not there, pull out. Like I talked about earlier in this live, take it in phases. You're going to lose some, then you reverse for a while. You're going to gain a little weight back. That's okay. Then you you come back from a better spot. And you make the next step of progress, and you take it in phases. But don't be so paranoid, or not paranoid. That's the wrong word. Don't be so, I guess, just afraid of gaining weight that you won't switch phases, because you have your whole life. Like, you're not going to you can't just stay here forever, and especially if you're just being crushed and over it. Metabolically speaking, hormonally speaking, mentally, you're just going to be miserable, and it's just unlikely to happen. And most people that try to force it when it's not there, they just turn into effort mode and eventually gain way more weight than they ever would have going through a reverse, because they do it from a position of being in a terrible spot metabolically and way overeating. This is in the next video that I got coming out too. And the video I just shared with Tammy, called scared to reverse diet. Watch this. Make sure you watch that one. That would be a good one for you. But just know that your weight isn't who you are. It's really good to focus on other things like performance-based goals. So the fact that you're looking into getting into something like powerlifting is fantastic, because now you have something else to focus your attention on versus always just wanting to be smaller all the time. Now you switch to performance-based goals and things that are part of what you're trying to accomplish, and it's just going to be so much better for you. And don't get so caught up in that number on the scale, and build some muscle, focus on this phase, and then the time to cut will come eventually. So hopefully that's helpful. I don't understand how to incorporate cardio to increase my deficit. How much cardio equals how many calories on a cut? I can't answer that for you because it varies so much, not only based on the type of cardio, how much you weigh, what your height is, all that type of stuff, but even more than that, your genetics. So I can't say this equals that. The only thing you can do is start adding in more cardio to try to help, and then being consistent, monitoring, adjusting. So if you're consistent with your deficit, if you're consistent with your calories and your protein especially, and if you're consistent with your exercise, then you monitor that and see how things are going. And then when things aren't moving anymore, then you make some adjustments. I have a video called how to adjust macros when cutting. I'm going to pull it up here because I talk about this video all the time. The regulars here are probably tired of me talking about it, but I really feel like it's like, as far as my videos go, it's the best video I have in terms of explaining how everything works and how to get through it. It's a longer video, so I think it deters people, but how can I explain how to do absolutely everything for the most part in a short video? You know what I mean? Like a year's worth of experience. So anyways, I'm rambling again. Sorry. Colin DeWaay, how to adjust macros. Yeah, right here. How to adjust macros for fat loss, easy weight loss guide. It's 18 minutes, but it literally walks you through everything. How to find maintenance calories, how to make the initial adjustments, how to incorporate diet breaks and refeeds, how to make adjustments when you hit plateaus, how to adjust your calories and cardio. It's all in there. It's packed full of information. So if you haven't seen this video, I'm going to get the link. I would highly recommend it. Yeah. Let's see. Looks like 2 people didn't like my video. I'm going to type it in here. How to adjust macros. That's the best place you can go to get the information you're looking for. But yeah, I mean, you're not really going to know. It's just about making the adjustment and taking it from there. Yeah, I did see that post. I thought I was pretty crazy. I wanted to dive into it further, which I haven't. I did see just kind of like the what do you call it? The description or whatever it's called, but I haven't dug into it further. One thing I do know that is true is that males and females, how do I want to word this? It's kind of escaping me right now. See, this is exactly what I wanted to avoid. It's escaping me. But yeah, I did see it, and for them, I think there's probably something to it. Did he go into actually any detail as to what he thought? Um, Let me look it up. Why am I not finding him? Bill, there he is. Why am I not seeing it? There, wait, no. Huh. Did he delete it? Or am I just not seeing it? Oh, right here. The very first one. I'm just gonna scroll down and see if he has like a conclusion. Okay, so basically he's saying that he's always thought that males would gain more, which I would too. Does it mean he's changed his mind? No, it takes more than just 2 analyses to change his mind, but makes it more open, which is great. You always want to be open. Okay, so here's kind of what he's saying. And that is that the best way to do this would be to take males and females together in the same study, because these are just meta-analyses, so they're taking different studies together and forming a conclusion, basically. And he's saying you would take them and put them in the same study, have them do the same resistance training program, probably same kind of protein requirements and things like that, and then measure against that, because one of the things that could be happening here is perhaps in the one study, in maybe in some studies males are only doing a little bit of a training stimulus, and in the other one the females are on a way better resistance training program, or maybe they're accounting for protein in their diet, whereas the males were on a low protein diet. You know, things like that we always have to consider. And I think we can all agree for the most part that males tend to build more muscle than females do, but we always have to be open to our perceptions. That's how we grow and get better, and if more and more data continues to come out, then we want to pay attention to that. But I mean, one thing we do know is that men have about 10 times as much testosterone as women do, so naturally it makes it easier to build muscle for the most part. But it's definitely interesting, and I haven't dug through the actual meta-analysis myself to talk I don't know, well about it. Hey, so I'm in a cutting phase for the past 5 weeks. For the 4 weeks, I consumed 2,000 calories, and the 5th week, I'm consuming 1,800 calories. So far, I have lost 5 kilograms. Can I take a diet break? And also, after 8 weeks of fat loss, shall I again reduce from 1,800 to 1,600? So I wouldn't reduce your calories. And again, the video I just posted about how to adjust macros, watch that video. It's going to tell you everything you need to know. But I don't make adjustments unless things start stalling out. You don't want to just reduce calories just because you've been doing it for a while. So if you're still seeing progress, and 5 kilograms in 4 weeks, I don't care how big you are to start with. That's good. That's pretty good progress. That's what, 10, 11, probably 11-ish pounds, 11, 12 pounds. And in 4 weeks, that's a lot. So even for a 300-pound person, that's still 1% of your body weight on average per week. So you're losing plenty. So I wouldn't keep reducing your calories until you hit some plateaus. You can definitely take a diet break. You can take a diet break at any point and then come back. But if you're still losing during your diet, or excuse me, if you're losing well, which you are, and then you take a diet break, just come back from your diet break and go right back to what you're doing before and don't adjust down. If you're starting to stall out, then a diet break, coming back into an adjustment afterwards, is a great strategy I like to take. Yes, yeah. So with I've got I'm starting to get a lot more college clients lately, actually, and it is like your choices are limited, but it doesn't make it impossible. And again, the biggest struggle with that is usually the all or nothing mentality that so many people have. And it's like, well, I don't know exactly what's in it, so I can't track it. Not true. You can give it a value, you can give it a best guess and roll with it. That's still better than not having any clue and then just kind of going nuts because you don't know. So trying to stock up on things like whey protein powder and things like that to help get the protein in your dorm yourself, knowing that the lunch options and stuff are more limited. That's a really good strategy to help with the protein side of things. Core Nutritionals, I love their protein powders. Of course, I'm biased, but you can use code Colin to get some protein. And I love their ISO chocolate peanut butter. It's friggin' delicious. And it's a great way to get extra protein in. So many people are afraid of whey protein for some reason. And it's just such a great way to get more protein in with hardly any calories. And it tastes good if you get the right stuff. So that's a good strategy to take. And then, yeah, I mean, you just do the best you can and not get too caught up in just because you don't have full control. That doesn't mean that you can't still come close. Perfect. Yeah. I still miss powerlifting sometimes, but not enough to actually get back into it and and actually do it. Yeah, sugar-free Jell-O is a game changer. Um, yeah, I mean, you can walk. Walk is fantastic and a great way to help. But I'm not sure if there was a. Let me scroll back up. I think I'm missing something. Oh yeah, I mean, so yeah, just add more walking and just see how your body responds. I actually did a video recently too about that. How much walking? Very welcome. Sure. Yeah, I mean, again, you just don't want to get too caught up in like, okay, they got all these ingredients, and I think that's the thing a lot of people struggle with is oh, I got to get every little ingredient down to the exact quantity, and I don't know for sure. And it's like, man, just estimate the best you can. Like, obviously, the more exact you can be, the better off you're going to be, but it's not always going to be realistic. And the one thing you can do too is try to give it a best guess per ingredient. If it's something that they're going to have frequently, if like it's something that they're going to eat a lot of, then you break it down best you can. You're not going to know for sure, but break it down best you can. Save it as a meal in MyFitnessPal, and then you can just reuse that meal moving forward, so it's always in there. You don't have to do it every single time. After diet break, how many calories do I have to start from 2000? Or I already answered that. It depends. If you're still losing, then don't make any adjustments. If you're not losing, then come back and make the adjustment. But watch that video. It'll explain all that. Yeah, I mean, I think we all pretty much agree that for the most part. But there's, and he's not saying that he thinks that women build just as easily as men. In fact, he specifically said in here that he's not changing his mind based on this particular thing. He's just saying, okay, like something's showing contrary, we need to pay attention and look for more evidence. But yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree. Like if you look at female bodybuilders versus male bodybuilders as a whole, I think it's pretty clear. All right, I think that's it. But I'll give a couple minutes if anybody has anything else. Oop, what'd I do? Sorry. Nothing else? As a reminder, if you're interested in online coaching, head to my website, ColinDeWaayTraining.com, fill out an application, and I will get back to you via email with a video link going over it. Check that spam folder. It will be in there almost for sure. I haven't figured out how to avoid that yet. I think it's because I sent a link with a video and it doesn't like links, but I don't want to respond without a video. It's so much more personable. All right, that must be it. So I'm going to call it. Thank you guys so much. I will probably do, it probably won't be again until, well, what's the date here? It's probably going to be like 3 weeks, unless I can get one next week, but I don't think so. So it is the 29th. Next week is the 5th. I definitely can't do the 12th. So maybe the 19th before the next one. But appreciate it. Appreciate you all. And if you need anything, just let me know. All right. Take care. Have a fantastic weekend. Thank you.